So I know I just put something out today that is fairly lengthy, a 20-minute podcast recording about running. That was supposed to come out yesterday. Still happy it came out though. It was about a topic in regards to running that really just developed into about some things I think anyways, need in our lives. But the original intent for Mondays was to do a cross between memory and media Monday, talking either about past memories that helped form who I am, or about media that I have been consuming, whether it be books, movies, TV shows, whatever, really, and how that's been. Ooh, that was a little Sean Connery, and how that has been forming my, philosophy, my mindset, and outlook on life. And the thing that makes it hard to choose is that you consume so much. You got to figure out what to talk about, right? It's hard to pick, and also you know outline what progression we're gonna have here for each upcoming week, right? Do I go by over the years? Do I go by genre? Do I rotate through different genres of media? Uh, there's a lot of ways I could approach this. So I'm still not quite sure about the format yet, but I have chosen the topic for today. I'm quite sure of it. It's very formative. Before I start, though, if any of you have any opinions about, what you might want to see in terms of this as a progression, right? In terms of how I choose to cycle through topics for Memory and Media Monday, please let me know. And as was pointed out to me, there are a few ways you can reach me, but in previous podcasts, was not particularly good about letting people know how to contact me. So if you are, watching on YouTube, of course, you can just leave a comment. Um, if you're not, though, there are a few other ways you can contact me. One is by contacting me at Gmail. So you can send an email to selfimprovementdave@gmail.com, or you can also just email. I believe on my website there should be a contact us button. And actually, just for the sake of clarity, let's check that right now. So there's going to be a little bit of dead space. Okay, so for example, I am now on my homepage, selfimprovementdave.com. It says contact. I click on it. Right, okay. And it's funny that I forgot this, but the email I've set up is David, because that's my name. So it's David at selfimprovementdave.com. There's also a phone number. That's obviously not a real phone number that you can contact me at. It is 1-555-555-5555. And that's just a part of the whatchamacallit, boilerplate, the kind of generic template that was created for my website when it was first being made, and I just haven't edited the boilerplate. It also has a bunch of filler generic text nearby. That's also not relevant. So yeah, a lot of work to be done on my website. Anyways, for today, I would like to go with something that is kind of a combination of both Memory and Media Monday, and it is Harry Potter. And the reason I wanted to talk about Harry Potter is that in my adult life, I've actually been missing out on reading more often. And it's kind of crazy to me over the last, I want to say, well, I'm 30 now. I would say I stopped reading for recreation around the age of 20, I would say, somewhere midway through college. I would say that has to be, the most relevant reason for that is the inundation of reading and information processing that I got from, just college. Not that I was a particularly studious student, but what I was doing was I was just reading a lot in a very concentrated amount to try to crunch for test time, because most of the points were for midterms and finals. So, just try to cram in the few days before a bunch of information, and reading became very unfun, which is unfortunate. I'm also now beginning to wonder, if a lot of children, growing up kind of experience something similar where reading is only for work and they don't quite have enough time to enjoy it for leisure, to process at their own pace, to really, explore it as they would like, as opposed to just getting all this information shoved into their brain at a pace, and also just to have content shoved in that they don't particularly find interesting. Maybe it's a big part of, what kills reading amongst the youth. Just kind of a thought. I haven't really done any study into it, but I think with all things, taking things at a reasonable pace and processing information in a way that works for you, and having the information be relevant to your interests to spark, this sort of excitement, whether it's hard work or not, is pretty important. Oh goodness, I realized I've left the window open and there's some sounds coming from the outdoors. So this will be an interesting test at the roughly 6 minute mark, a little before, to see how the audio is really processed. I know I'm kind of digressing, but I'm really curious. I have this new mic setup. It's got a cover, a pop filter, and in the instructions it did mention that to really get a proper audio recording, to speak in from the front side. Otherwise, I wouldn't pick it up quite as well. So I'm hoping, because the microphone is facing me and not the outdoors, that it's not going to pick up too much of the audio from outside. We will see. Okay. So Harry Potter, to me, and to quite a lot of people, especially amongst people who are aged very similarly to me, I was born in 1990, and if I remember correctly, the first Harry Potter books, the first Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the, depending on where you are, the Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone. I believe in the United States it was Sorcerer's Stone, and in the UK it was Philosopher's Stone. Uh, it's been a hot moment since I have thought about or read Harry Potter, so hope you'll forgive me. Um, yeah, and so the thing was, before that, I think maybe I had been reading other things. I distinctly remember, I believe it was my second grade, not our. I didn't share second grade teachers with most of you. Um, our second grade teacher, Mrs. Matosa, she read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone to us. I don't remember if it was every day, but it was quite frequently. I think it was most days. And I distinctly remember, I think, sitting on the couch alongside my classmates and hearing the description, particularly of Dumbledore as he walked through um, Privet or along Privet Drive and took out the lights. Right, it's a huge part of the opening of Harry Potter, where for the first time you are really drawn into the magic. Right, it's established that this story takes place in England, but at first there's owls flittering around. There's a mention of this Dursley family and their everyday life, and it's not particularly clear where this story is going. Um, there's no tension really yet. But that moment when you have this old man walking down the street at night, and he is somehow taking out all the lights from the street lamps, rendering the entire street dark, and he looks over at this cat, right? Who turns out not to be a cat. I don't want to give away too many details for anyone who hasn't read this book that's been out for 20 something years. But, it really builds that moment of like something is about to happen, right? Something magical. And we don't know if this man is sinister, good, neutral. We don't know what his intentions are. Like, why is he taking out the lights? Which I think, from a neutral perspective, we would normally expect to be kind of a bad thing, right? Why would a good guy want the lights to be out? As we shortly find out, he is quite a particular and very important part of the story. But I'm not here to narrate all of Harry Potter or to comment on the plot. Uh, Rather, to talk about just what a magical time that was for people like me, and around the world. Uh, it really blew up, you know? I mean, maybe not necessarily with the first book right away, but soon after, We were getting, if I remember correctly, every year a Harry Potter book, and we didn't know, what was going to happen next. Harry Potter, what kind of shenanigans was going to happen, what kind of new powers he would unlock, what new creatures he would encounter, how, Voldemort was going to try to get at him next. And we could not wait to find out. For me, with each and every Harry Potter book, I it was a special thing where opening night, the release night, we would go out, we would get it. I would immediately rush home, and I set that day, for Harry Potter. I would sit down and I would read, and that is all I would do until I finished. Now, granted, I didn't, the books are fairly long. They start out, I think, at around like 300 pages, and with each progressive book, generally speaking, they got longer and longer until it hit, I believe, 830 something pages. I'm doing all this without looking up, even though I have the power of internet at my tips, but I'm just so excited. I'm just trying to, riff off of, how what I remember and how I felt at the time. And so obviously I wasn't able to read every single word of every single book in one sitting, but I was basically trying to speed read, skim through, and just get the whole, as like all the main points I could into my head as quickly as I could. And I would not, I'm not sure if I didn't eat or drink, but I definitely didn't do anything else important until I had finished, right? There was no homework, there was no going out to eat or play. It was just Harry Potter. That first day, that first night was Harry Potter. And it just really got me into reading it because the story was so captivating, right? This boy who, for some reason, was chosen out of so many people to be the focus of the most dangerous and evil wizard who had ever lived, marked to be his opponent. And he, an orphan, was trying to make his way through life, a not particularly happy life at first, being adopted not too thrillingly or enthusiastically by his uncle and aunt, and finally finding out that he is magical, that he has this potential, that there's this world waiting for him where there's so much beyond his wildest dreams of what he can do. He meets these amazing people along the way um, who help and love him, and who he, ends up loving and really becoming a family with back. It's just this incredible story, right? And I think, especially at the time, this also is coming with the advent of the internet, where obviously before 1997 there wasn't internet, but it was still kind of the Wild West in a sense, right? It hadn't been corporatized, as I would like to call it. And so leaks of, you know, the plot weren't particularly big until later on. And the communities you formed when you talked and read and did things that related to Harry Potter were mostly, offline or within the very limited budding communities of the internet. And so, that magical that sense of magic was even more magical, so to speak, right? Because you're making a special effort to get all these people together to communicate, to talk about Harry Potter, and it felt very special as a tight knit community, which was crazy because, soon after the first few books came out, the popularity of Harry Potter exploded worldwide. So it's not like there were only a few people that were reading and talking about Harry Potter. It was big news, and it got into even like philosophical and religious um, realms where a lot of religions were kind of getting down on them or trying to debate, like, are they okay, are they moral, are they evil, what's going on. But it still, even then, felt like a very special group to be a part of, even though in a sense it was mainstream, right? Yeah, sorry, I'm just getting real excited thinking back on the times of Harry Potter. And I'm not saying that like there aren't special moments like that now. I'm just saying to me and a lot of other people back then, it was our thing. It was special. And I don't know if something quite like that can be replicated again. Um, yeah. So it was just a huge part of a lot of people growing up and inspiring them to get into reading, to explore these magical worlds, and to, I think, indirectly really explore a lot of other cultures and languages and just branch out really and how you think. I think, for example, maybe it might have gotten people into things such as just a shot in the dark D&D, right, with like different sort of classes, wizards now becoming more popular as Harry Potter became more popular. Um, but also things like, for example, in the language of spells and the magic of Harry Potter, there is a lot of things drawn directly from English and I think Latin, right? There's a lot of things that really make sense if you think about it. So, for example, this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler. Again, it seems silly to warn about spoilers, right? If you're talking about such an old book, but nonetheless, there is a very important character in the series, and his name is Lupin. And if you know scientific names, if I remember correctly, the scientific name for a, I think, kind of a generic wolf. Please don't crucify me if I am incorrect. But I remember correctly, it's Canis lupus, right? So Canis referring to like canines, for example, and lupus, Lupin. Um, Turns out Lupin is a werewolf, right? And so it's, if you know the language and you know the science behind it, it's not such a big surprise. But to kids like me, right, that was a big surprise. And then you have things. This one I actually think is a little silly. Stupefy. Stupefy is actually just an English word. It means to stun already. So that one is a little silly. But yeah, there's a whole world behind it and little like Easter eggs that I think that really added to the magic, of discovering Harry Potter. So for example, in the first book, again, a spoiler, there is a magical mirror called the Mirror of Erised, and there is this text at the top, and this one I will actually look up because I don't actually remember the exact text, and I don't remember if I don't think I figured this one out by myself. I think someone had to tell me, but upon finding this out, I was like, oh my god, that is one of the coolest things ever. Okay, so in this mirror, or sorry, on top of this mirror, there is this text, and it says Eristed stra eru oit ube kafru oit onwosi. Don't know if that's actually how you pronounce it, but the point of that is simply if you reverse the text, you respace out the letters. It says, whatchamacallit, I show not your face, but your heart's desire. And so, finding out things like that as a kid, um, blew my mind because that is what the mirror actually did, right? When you looked into this mirror, you didn't see just your face. It showed you what you wanted absolutely, absolutely the most in this entire world. Things like that. And later on, there being a misprint, I believe, later in the series. In book 4, there is, without giving away too much, a moment when someone's mother shows up first. Oh wait, no, sorry. The mother showing up first was the correct version, but they realized the first print, I believe, was the father showing up first, and they realized that because it was supposed to be a reverse order, the father was not supposed to show up first, but rather the mother. I apologize for the lack of context, right? So if you haven't read the series, you don't know what's going on, I don't want to spoil it. That sounds confusing. But it's crazy that, if I remember correctly, there are a good number of copies of the fourth Harry Potter book that have the incorrect, you know, sequence printed out in text. It's like, oh, dad shows up, then mom. And then later they're like, oh, wait, hold up, that's wrong. Mother is supposed to show up first, then the father. And it just, adds kind of to the collectible, you know, mystique of it. So, for example, like with coins and cards, right? When they have misprints, those tend to be more valuable because it was a mistake, it's rare, and most commonly found versions have the quote unquote correct version. Okay, taking a little breather here, just kind of jumping around on topics, whatever sparks my fancy as I go along. I think, everyone growing up, they find their thing that really sparks their interest and is, and to them, an iconic piece of, you know, not necessarily literature. It could be anything really, but it's a whatchamacallit, capstone to the idea of childhood. When you look back, it's the thing that really cinched it together. And for me, growing up, especially in my elementary school years, Harry Potter was that. It was what got me into reading. It was what got me into, just this sense of fantasy and magic. And yeah, it really helped drive along that sense of wonderment, of that curiosity of what's out in the world, what is possible. And I'm sure, there are many people out there that were really disappointed when they turned the age of 11 and they didn't get their letter to go to Hogwarts. Because even though most children, even, right, as young as they are, they know that they won't go to Hogwarts because magic isn't real, at least in the sense that it's portrayed in the Harry Potter universe. You want it to be real, right? Just as so many people growing up with Star Wars uh maybe tried to move something with their mind, with a force, right? It's this desperation for something wonderful and amazing to be real, and for us to be part of that special, elite, unique group, right? Something that can define us, that we love. And so for me, that was Harry Potter. I never did expect to, get a letter in the mail from an owl, sending me off to a magical school that would whisk me away from all my troubles as I learned magic and, got beyond it all. Because really, if you think about it, if you read Harry Potter or you've seen the movies or whatnot, you realize that, you know, Harry Potter's life after he discovers he's magical, that he's a wizard, it's not in many senses better. It is much more fulfilling, and he loves it much more. He meets people he actually likes and will bond with for the rest of his life. But it is still filled with loss and heartbreak and suffering, right? So, in that sense, he didn't escape his troubles. He just found troubles that were worth the while, that in overcoming them, it helped him really cement who he was, right? He kind of lacked identity before he found all that. And so I think, we were all hoping for something that we can overcome that will really prove to ourselves who we are, and we'll, find ourselves much more confident in our own identity. It's the reason a lot of people reach out to, I don't know, like it's why, for example, you have advertising designed the way it is. It's like that is who I would aspire to be. I want to look like that model, right? Or that athlete or that movie star. If I could just become that, I would be self assured. I would be happy in my life. So, I mean, kind of taking a little turn here. I know J.K. Rowling has gotten a lot of flack over the years, and I would say, rightfully so for her comments on trans identity, um, things like that, as well as her, additions to the Harry Potter universe through Twitter and random, comments that are, I guess, technically canon because she, the creator of the universe, said so, but that are one strange. Like, for example, how wizards and witches got rid of poop and stuff like that. Um, but that were just not necessary and didn't quite seem in theme with what she had previously established and the books that she had written. So, she gets a lot of grief and a lot of flack, and I'm not saying she doesn't deserve that. But one thing that I think, especially reading the opinions and comments of people talking about Harry Potter in the modern day, in 2021 and in a lot of the recent years, because she hasn't actually, the main series, the main 7 books were finished years ago, right? I'm not even sure when did the last book even come out? It's been so long. Not gonna lie. Let's see. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Let's see when that came out. That came out in internet connection issues. Ooh, that's kind of embarrassing. When you look up Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, it shows part 1 first, in terms of like, it shows the movie and the cast. Really? Come on. The book should really, the source material should really be the one that comes up first. One of the things I kind of have an issue with in terms of search algorithms. And I understand that this makes sense, but it's based off of, recent popularity. If I am to understand this correctly. And the books came out, but the movies came out later and generated popularity later. Anyways, rambling. Okay, so that book came out 2007. So it's been 13 years. Kind of crazy to think about, the last book of the main series. It's been more than a dozen years since it last came out. Oh, wow, shit. 14 years. Sorry. Wow, it's been a while. Um, so, there's been a good, length of time in between the last book and where we are now. So that's given a lot of time for opinions of J.K. Rowling to really change, right? Because it's not in the middle of that creation process, right? We're not in the middle of her publishing and releasing these books. But I want to say from roughly around 1997 to 2007, um, which is a good roughly 10-year period, right? She inspired so much good and wonderment in this world. Um, People who maybe were on the fringes of society in terms of their interest in magic and fantasy, um, and getting people to read, making reading cool, and nerds cool. Like, for example, Harry has glasses, which I know is not the defining trait of being a nerd. But Hermione, total, bookworm, super strict on rules. And she was very core to, the success of, one, the series, and two, Harry Potter himself. So, she generated this amazing, amazing universe in and of itself of like magic in the real world, of this like loving, amazing community, right? Um, Thinking of, back on all the people I ever met because of Harry Potter, it was never negative experiences, always at the very least neutral, but overwhelmingly positive. Just people talking about the really cool lore and etymology of Harry Potter, of cool things that could happen and what would possibly happen next in this series, cool events we could do together that would celebrate Harry Potter. Like, for example, in, I believe, third or fourth grade, I think the summer after third grade and before fourth grade, I attended a summer school class that was Harry Potter. And I'm still friends actually with the teacher to this day. Her name is Susan Shirley. I don't think she does Harry Potter stuff anymore, but one of the most beautiful human beings I've ever met in this entire world. And you have to remember, I have a very, very distinct memory of how this all went down back in 2000. um I guess, sorry, no, not 2000. This would have been what, 1998 or 1999, when I was in third to fourth grade transition. So I think 1999. And we made potions. We did herbology. We played Quidditch, and this was before there was an official established version of Quidditch, I think. She made her own version. And maybe she might have been talking to other people, but she was constructing this for elementary school kids and making it work. And we were all cooperating, right? We were all friendly and not like pelting each other with bludgers the first chance we could get and playing dirty, but like playing it in a beautiful way. And it was just an amazing time. And for years, I kept my wand that we made, and the crystal that came with the wand. I had the like lovely smelling herbs from herbology. That's how I fell in love with butterbeer, and pumpkin pie. Because I hadn't had pumpkin pie before then, but we had it for part of like our celebration. And she was such a beautiful person, inside and out, that I don't remember this kid's name, but very late in the class, there was a kid who just out of the blue asked her, "Are you married?" And it's so funny. We all just bust out laughing. We were like, "Are you gonna propose?" kind of deal. Um, yeah, and it was just a very memorable time. By far my favorite summer school experience ever. I Everything else pales in comparison. Yeah. So, just a lot of nostalgia for this sort of thing, for what Harry Potter brought to all of us. Ooh, yeah. Anyways, if any of you have, your iconic childhood moment, your childhood cultural sort of introduction, something that you latched onto that really helped form a big part of your identity, it'd be cool to read your comments on the YouTube section. Or I'm a little hesitant to open up comments on my website just because there's no built-in moderation. But I'll see what I can do about that. Maybe what I can do is if people email me comments, I'll just read them out later on a separate YouTube video. Not that I have enough listeners or watchers right now, but just something to think about for another day. Anyways, I hope this conversation about, you know, for me, it's Harry Potter, but really what I would love to think about is key positive childhood cultural and identity formation. Um, so I hope, that brings you back to your childhood in a positive way. And hopefully you carry that beautiful, nostalgic feeling, for at least the rest of the day, and hopefully longer. All right. Thank you for listening to me just ramble about random parts of Harry Potter that don't explain the plot, um, in any comprehensible way, for about half an hour. I don't think the future ones will be quite this long. I could be wrong. We'll see. All right. Thank you. And I will probably be releasing something on Wednesday, but Friday the latest. All right. Goodbye.